I'm Shannon.
And I'm Lisa.
And KK's here too. And you're listening to Blacktivities,
a celebration of all things Black.
Black culture, Black history,
Black perspectives, and Black panache.
Celebrating our Blackness doesn't mean exclusion.
Everybody's invited, but you got to come in and have a seat.
So let the Blacktivities begin. What's good, Blacktivities fam? I'm your host, Shannon, and today it's just me and KK. So Amanda Seales came under some fire a couple of months ago for her interview with the other Shannon, Shannon Sharpe, the one who's making millions. I'm not quite there yet. She was telling stories about her life, and she told some childhood stories about racism that she experienced. And Shannon gave some pushback about some of it. People were saying that she was kind of doing the most, as they usually say about her. But one story in particular was about her white teacher who got mad because she corrected her about the Aborigines when she was teaching. And she had said that that teacher was racist. So she said that she was always correcting the teacher, though. And so that's where Shannon's pushback came in, because he said, well, it could have just been the fact that you were a student, a child correcting a teacher, and not necessarily like a white-black thing. So I thought that's a good question, a good topic, because I know that I've made comments on social media in the past, and I've had people make the comment back that everything's not about race because they couldn't see the connection that I was trying to make to Black people and whatever the topic was that they were talking about. So I'm an introspective person. I thought about it. Is everything about race here in America? I'm going to get your thoughts on that, KK, in a minute. But first, we got a pop-up shop going. The Blacktivities shop is only going to be open for a couple of months, but we have some logo tees and we have some other tees relating to things that we've talked about on the show. I got to make a Not a Monolith shirt for you, KK.
Hey!
Yes. So if you love Blacktivities, go check out our Blacktivities pop-up shop. I linked it in the show notes.
I'm definitely going to be sporting a few. I got to say that. I'm going to be sporting a few. Not a Monolith will be one of them, but I'm going to be sporting a few because if I can rep Blacktivities with that beautiful logo, that's what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm.
Yes. There's some other things in there that I think you might like. There's one about tropes, like listing out the different tropes, like Sapphire and all them, and then crossing those out, and then underneath it's just me.
I love it.
I also want to shout out at Asha SHJ, Ross Liggett, and Saint Ugly for their recent reviews on Apple Podcasts. We love that you love the show. And I don't know about you, KK, but those reviews, they kind of fuel me because I do a lot and I sacrifice a lot to make the show happen. And knowing that people are liking it and identifying with the content kind of gives me that second win that I need. So keep them coming, y'all. Like, we appreciate you.
Please do. And I have to shout you out and just say you grind so hard to make everything happen. And to hear that, I can see how that will fuel you because of the work you do. And it certainly fuels me because I want to know that, you know, we're reaching people who, with some of these conversations that we have in our households every day. So this is everything. And when y'all let us know what you think, it definitely strikes a chord with us and does fuel us to keep going. Good or bad, it fuels us to keep going. Let me just say that, but especially the good.
For sure. Yeah, good and bad.
Yep. Because we ain't stopping.
Right. Let's talk some big facts, KK. With big facts, like in this topic, it would take a long time to go through the entire history of Black people starting from slavery. But it is a fact that a lot of the laws and the rules created in the US disproportionately affect Black people. Why? Well, the obvious reason stems from slavery. We started out behind, and then we had things like the Tulsa Massacre, which, that's just one of the many of those things that happened. And anytime those things happen, progress was made and it was thwarted. Can't say that word. Jim Crow laws, voting rights restrictions, redlining, those are just a few of the things that were blatantly discriminatory toward Black people. In fact, this may not be a well-known fact, but the Nazis actually looked at our Jim Crow laws to design what they did in Nazi Germany. A lot of people may not know that. Then we got a point to where the laws became not so overtly discriminatory, but they still affect us disproportionately because of the damage of all the blatantly discriminatory things that happened. So then we have things like the war on drugs in the 70s, where Nixon declared drug abuse to be public enemy number one. And he created the DEA, which is the Drug Enforcement Agency. That sounds like a good thing on the surface. Let's get rid of drugs. But in the 80s, when Reagan became president, he kind of took it to another level. When I was growing up, I remember the Just Say No campaign that his wife Nancy started in school. Like, that was the thing we all got taught. People got scared when there was a crack epidemic, and that affected Black people the most. Notice, though, a side note, how they're treating the opioid crisis these days and who that predominantly is affecting versus the crack epidemic and who that predominantly affected. But that's another episode all in itself. The Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986 established mandatory minimum prison sentences. So 5 grams of crack and 500 grams of cocaine became a mandatory 5-year sentence. But that created another problem because 80% of crack users were Black. So now there's a disproportionate amount of Black people being locked up for drugs. And so this legislation that's supposed to be about drugs is really about race. And that's just one example. We're going to talk about some more in our discussion. But the moral of the story here is that slavery and the subsequent laws and legislation make more things about race than people might actually think. So I want to leave you with a few stats. 2002 stat: among Black U.S. households in 2022, 49% earned less than $50,000. A 2021 stat: Black Americans are nearly twice as likely to experience poverty as their white counterparts. There's also a higher unemployment rate for Black people, which means greater job insecurity and economic instability. Black people are more likely to depend on public health insurance. And another 2022 stat: about a quarter, 26% will say, of all Black U.S. adults ages 25 and older have a bachelor's degree or more education. So only about a quarter. All these stats are connected, and we'll kind of talk about that in our discussion, but that's big facts.
Yes. Thank you for the big facts. This is information that most people don't have. Folks in our community don't often even realize how that impacts how we live right now. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that. And you included a lot of things that I had been thinking about when we were going to talk about this subject. Like, yeah, that's it. The thing is that when slavery ended, there were structures put in place that carried out the systemic oppression. Mm-hmm. So yes, there is freedom of the slaves. And we just celebrated Juneteenth, which is wonderful. It was beautiful. I don't know what y'all did there, but what we did here was we celebrated. And I'm telling you, it was an amazing weekend. And it's great that we can look back and have that. I have some thoughts about the fact that it is a federal holiday and not a for us, by us holiday anymore. That is a different conversation as well. However, I will say this, when you think about things like the prison industrial complex, which was discussed in the documentary and the book 13th, that is definitely a factor. And when you think about the school to prison pipeline, so, we're going to have a lot of people. I'm going to try to do better about name calling because I'll be calling them, certain things. But even us saying, oh, well, race, it's a constructed concept. It's not, I don't care how it came about. This is the world in which we live. And so we have to live in reality. If that's your argument about the origins of it, then you can go on over there and fix that. But right now, this is what we and our children and our ancestors have had to deal with, this socially constructed thing that folks are saying isn't real. It may not be real, but it's very real in its impact. So, yes. See, a lot of things are about race. It is about race because that's the lens by which we see. So as we see things through the lens of race, well, our experience here, because race is the one thing you can see. I may not be able to see a person's ethnicity or their religion, but I can certainly see race. We're not colorblind. None of us are. So I just wanted to start off with that. There are things in place. We're not delusional. We're not overreacting. And these things do exist. And you go race first because race is the biggest chasm. I cannot see your sexuality, your religion, your ethnicity, your culture, but I can see that. And that's what folks see. And that's the lens by which we exist.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, to me, those stats matter because it shows that even when it's not about race, it's about race. Like when you talk about making changes to laws in housing or finance, when you talk about getting rid of certain programs or funding opportunities, when you talk about new voting requirements, you're not directly talking about race. But what you're doing is going to affect Black people in a negative way because there are a lot more of us that are in poverty. There are a lot more of us that don't own things or can't afford things. There are a lot fewer of us that have the higher education degrees. And all of that is connected because that affects what jobs we're able to have and how much money we're able to make. So a lot of these laws and things that are seemingly about other things end up directly affecting us or indirectly affecting us. You can't say that certain issues are not about race. It's about poverty, because I've heard a lot of people say, no, it's not about race. It's about who's rich and who's powerful. Well, who's not rich and who's not powerful? Most of the time, it's not us. So you can't necessarily use that argument because it still indirectly comes back around to race.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned jobs. So we had a great and interesting statement made during Thursday's debate that there are Black jobs that are in jeopardy because of our migrants. I just want to know, do you have a Black job? Because I'm curious. I want to know what the Black jobs are, because to me, I think the Black jobs have to do with picking cotton and sugarcane. I mean, that's the only Black jobs. I'm just saying, I want to know what the Black jobs are, because I'm curious,
Okay,
maybe I need to get one
job, though.
Huh?
You might have a Black job because you work in diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, that's my black job. Hey.
Let's talk about how much of a mess that whole thing was.
I have so many thoughts. I watched the first part of it and I couldn't.
I didn't even
My
watch it
stomach
because I
started
knew it was
doing.
going to be a disaster.
Ugh.
I just don't know. I don't know what is we going to do. I don't know.
Well, I often will watch The View because I like to hear what the ladies have to say. They always give really good insight. And Sarah Haynes, I was kind of on her side because Sarah was the only one who was like, look, we need a different Democratic candidate.
Absolutely.
Because this ain't going to work. And then when they show, I don't know what they shot him up with after that. Because first of all, the Botox or whatever they did to his face looks hideous. I don't know what they did. I don't know if that's bad Botox, but his face is throwing me off because it's way different. And then after the debate, he went to a local place and was like dapping people up. And I was like, where was this man on the stage? Like, who is this guy? So, that threw me off. And Sarah said on the show, she was like, it's great that he can be that person when he's in the presence of the people, but presidency is about being able to win debates. And he did. He lost that debate. And I'm not an ageist. I feel like whoever can do the job can do the job. But you have to, and stuttering aside, you still have to be able to challenge what your opponent is saying. And you still have to be able to articulate your thoughts. That's fundamental to being a president. So I don't know. What did you think about the feedback since you didn't watch it? What do you think about the feedback you've heard?
I got like the highlights because I listen to The Daily every day. That's one of my favorite podcasts. And so they recapped the whole thing and I was like, oh, hell. We in trouble. We in trouble.
We are in so much trouble. And I am neither Democrat nor Republican. I just want a person who could do the job. And it's a shit show on both ends. You know what I'm saying?
None of them do the job.
Yeah, it's like we on the toilet and stuff is coming out of both ends. I mean, it's just bad. That's a horrible analogy, but I'm just saying it's just awful.
When they got to arguing about who could play golf better, I was like, I just throw up my hands.
Yeah. What an elitist argument. The most elitist argument you could talk about. It's just so ridiculous. And that is another thing. Like we're impacted. And what was really funny was you talk about how changing the voting laws, there's definitely voter suppression. And I'm a fan of Larry David's show. I have watched every single episode and I will go back and watch episodes because it is so hilarious. And on the last and final season, one of the things that they talked about, that they tapped into was Larry gave a Black woman a bottle of water as she was waiting to go vote. And so Larry got arrested. It became a whole thing. And it was just absolutely hilarious. Well, the thing about it, and that was the premise of, the entire season, Larry going back and forth to court. Well, that is really a thing. Like if people are standing in line, you're not supposed to give them. And this is not, I think it's in Georgia. I don't know. I don't believe it's in other states, but that's a thing. Like, how do you make people stand in longer lines? And then it's illegal to make them feel somewhat comfortable in those lines. Like, this is just
It's definitely
a nightmare. Is it in Georgia? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the voter registration laws. Like that's an example. They have the whole stop the steal thing going on with Trump. The election's rigged. People are voting multiple times. Fraud, 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 says Trump and all his cronies. So what do? Oh, we're going to make it safer to vote, right? We're going to make you have to have a driver's license to vote. We're going to get rid of ballot boxes because somebody could put fraudulent ballots in them. We're going to reduce the number of voting sites and the number of days and hours that you can vote. But you can't be served food or water when you wait in these hour-long lines because there's not enough polling places and the number of early voting days has gotten reduced. All those are Georgia things, by the way. What are we talking about here? We're talking about free and fair elections, but are we really though? Like if I live paycheck to paycheck and I'm not a salaried worker, statistically, I'm a person of color. I have to work on election day and my days off are on the weekend or maybe even not, but they stopped doing early voting on the weekend. We can't take our church vans to the polls anymore because there's no voting on Sundays anymore. So it's not about race, but it's about race because you're disenfranchising Black and brown voters.
Right. And the thing is, it may not start out as we're going to do this to affect, but it always has a subsequent negative impact.
Yeah.
You know,
same thing with vouchers. Like people talk about vouchers for private schools. Vouchers, we're talking about schooling. People don't see this as a threat because it provides parents with more choice. But we have to think about who has more choices. Do we, most Black people, have more choice? Usually it's the people with money, which is usually not us. They pull their kids out of the public schools, and that money is going with those families to their private schools. And then our kids who don't really have as much choice are left at the public schools, and then there's no funding because they're going to take that away if they go to a voucher system in education.
right.
Our schools are already underfunded, and so they're going to be even more underfunded, which means the education gap is going to continue to grow, which means a continued cycle of poverty for us, which means we can't ever overcome whatever circumstances we need to overcome as a people. And then, you know, crime increases because people get desperate. Like all of these things are causes and effects. So again, we're talking about education. We're not talking about race, but we're still talking about race here.
We're definitely talking about race just based on the impact. And a lot of people will say, I mean, even in general conversation, there's impact and there is intent. And you can say, well, that's not the intent, but you cannot deny the impact. So if I step on your foot and I break your toe, you know, I can say it wasn't my intent. I'm sorry that I stepped on your toe with my, 5-inch stilettos. It is what it is. I did it. My bad. But your toe is broke and I have to acknowledge that. And that's what we have in our system when it's like, oh, well, that wasn't our intent. Sorry, you kind of get that sort of response and a reaction that is very callous to things when you mention impacts. And so that's why we have laws changing in certain regions in our country, because, instead of accountability for the impact of my action, why not just switch the narrative, right? Why not just switch the narrative on everything that we can? And that removes the accountability for whatever ideas. So, Black folks came, you guys were migrants to the country and you got some skills. You were able to get some skills. So you became skilled laborers, right? My. So that's the narrative that they're asking teachers to teach, particularly in Florida,
yes.
And taking away the EDI stuff. It's all about removing accountability so that we cannot say this is racial. It is racial. Stop saying that race is a social construct created. Great. But that's still the parameters in which we live. You can't remove that. You can't abandon it. You're not going to, even if you start teaching our children that way, there will be folks who are truth tellers who exist. And it is incumbent upon us to tell those truths and correct the lies. And it's not even about a narrative. These are just flat out lies. You know, y'all can't immigrate it over here and we gave you skills. And, you know, when it comes to equity, diversity, inclusion efforts now, they don't like accountability and being called to the carpet over what white supremacy really is. Oh, white supremacy doesn't exist. Those EDI people are racist. They just want to cause a rift in our society. And we're saying, no, we're impacted by this. And so you silence the EDI, equity, diversity, inclusion efforts by saying in this state, any educational institution cannot teach or contract with anyone or have their own equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts within this state. That's what Texas is doing now. So we see the pushback. And it's not about correcting the narrative. It's not about changing lives. It really is about removing accountability. So that's what we're faced with. And I am convinced that although I detest both candidates, a Trump candidacy will certainly increase and embolden these inherent racists to continue the lies.
Now, my question to you, do you think that these lawmakers and people are aware of what they're doing? They're doing it on purpose, or do you think they're being naive?
I think they are white supremacists who are power hoarding. I think they enjoy the comforts of white supremacy. And there are people who, you know, aren't necessarily, I want to say, contributory to racism, but they are definitely beholden to white supremacy. And, you know, to me, the Supreme Court is one of the main arbiters of white supremacy. So, you know, you have people making these laws and doing all these things to protect. I read somewhere that in 2045, the United States will be a minority majority in terms of population in this country. And white people, some, are very afraid of that. And so you see power hoarding, you see all of these different things, information hoarding, all of these different things, trying to make sure. And I am convinced that that's why our abortion law changed. So in an effort to maintain power and maintain the creature comforts of white supremacy, why not make all these rules that negatively impact everybody else and keep me comfortable? So then you become complicit in white supremacy. Like you're complicit in that. Like, I'm cool with it. I'm not racist, but I'm cool with being comfortable. So let me just hold on to that. That's what we're seeing. And these are the folks we work with. Think about it. Oh, so-and-so, he's not racist. He's cool. He's invited. Everybody inviting everybody to the cookout. Shannon. There's too damn many people at the cookout who don't belong there. They all invited to the cookout, but be comfortable with white supremacy. No.
The thing is, we invite everybody to the cookout, but they don't be inviting us nowhere.
We don't get invited to the country club or the golf course. When is the last time you got an invite?
I used to work there, but
touche. I worked there. I wasn't invited. See, it's real.
Yeah, I actually had a kind of a back and forth with someone at my church. She didn't like what I was saying about some stuff because she was a huge Republican and Trump supporter. And so we actually had to have a sit down because it was a back and forth, and I don't like that energy. We finally came to one accord and were able to be cordial. But she said to me, if people are going to be honest with you, they fear losing their power. So she actually said that. So, yeah, I agree with you on that.
I was going to ask if she was white or black, if she was a Negropean or a white person.
Oh, white. Yeah.
Okay.
White, yeah.
Because the Negropeans be talking the same stuff, but go ahead.
No, she just, it was stuff that I was saying about Trump and things that were being put in place. And she thought I was attacking Trump. I was like, no, it's just like everything that I'm saying has to do with race. It's not about Trump himself or Republicans themselves. It's what I'm talking about is about race. And she didn't see that connection. But where it gets tricky is like the whole Amanda Seales thing. Like if you have a personal encounter with somebody and you end up getting slighted or mistreated in the situation, how can you tell if it's about race or not? Like I have a couple of more recent examples. My son, he got in trouble on the bus. And the bus driver, it was a substitute bus driver, had called me and said Jaden was up on the bus. He was yelling and being loud. I gave him so many warnings and, he's going to get in trouble with the principal and that kind of stuff. And I was thinking like, that really doesn't sound like my son, but I didn't want to be that parent that's like, no, my son doesn't behave this way or whatever. So like anything, we handle it at home. And my husband talked to him. And when I got home, my son wasn't in trouble. So I was like, what ended up happening with the whole bus thing? And he turns out, long story short, it wasn't him. It was some Indian kids on the bus, right? But he and the other black kid in our neighborhood were the ones who got blamed for it and had to go talk to the principal. So it's like, I don't want to think this is a race thing, but why was it those two kids that got in trouble and not the ones who did it? Like, how was that a mistaken identity kind of thing? You know what I mean?
Well, that has to do more with feeding into the stereotype. So the two black children who weren't doing anything, but maybe part of some sort of, because kids are going to be kids, but our kids are often adultified and vilified and will also they will be put in special ed more. They will be medicated more. So all of those things happen to our children. And it is because of the stereotypes that are out there about us as a race. And so you could see the Indian kids and you could see the black kids. But if you say somebody was cutting the food and somebody was being aggressive, who are you going to look for? You're going to look towards the black kids because that's the narrative that's out here, the lies that are out here regarding our children. So that's why it is based on, and whether people want to admit it or not, there are implicit and unconscious bias. And that could be part of the unconscious bias of the adults in that scenario. So they could have these biases that have not been addressed, particularly if they are part of a school system or whatever that is not addressing this. And, because people have to be trained to look inward. In the beginning, you said, I'm an introspective person. It takes some time to look inward and inspect yourself, to be introspective. And if people aren't taught that, they're going to point to whoever the usual suspects are. And unfortunately, it's our kids who are adultified, vilified, medicated, and assumptions are made about. It's rarely the Indian kids, because the Indian kids come over here. Their culture is one that has this narrative that they strive for excellence. And so the kids who are raised in a household where there's excellence is the norm and it's part of their structure, then yeah, they're least likely pointed out. So that's why. And I was going to say, I can tell that Jaden is a good kid. Just seeing the pictures and how you talk about Jaden and how you talk about your kids, period. But I feel like, and not saying kids can't be kids, because they will. So kids are going to be kids. They get caught up. They're just having fun and doing whatever. But we do have to allow our kids to be kids. We do have to allow that. Our kids have to grow up so fast and face so much. And I don't know how old Jaden is, but I do know that Tamir Rice was 12 years old, and I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, he's 11. And you know what? When he went and the principal spoke to them, I said, Jaden, why didn't you tell him it wasn't you guys who did it? And he said, I didn't want to be disrespectful and talk back. So he just went and told his teacher afterward that it wasn't him, and she handled it. So it could be about race without even the person thinking that this is about race.
That's it. That's the unconscious part. That's why the equity, diversity, inclusion teachings are important. The education that comes out of that, because it allows us to self-check. And if you are teaching that within communities and within institutions and within states and governments, and overall, this generation, as well as those are to come, we learn how to stop and become more introspective and look at ourselves, and we can check ourselves in the moment.
And you know what? I think that those biases are taught without even being taught, because it's something that you would get in teaching your kids how to live. If you have those biases, then you're going to pass them down to your kids more than likely.
Absolutely.
Well, Lisa is not here, and we usually do Lisa's pieces next, but fear not, because KK is also a poet. So she is going to bless us today with some of her poetry.
So this piece is very much about community and us. So I don't know why I'm losing my voice all of a sudden. I didn't talk so much. Here we go. My heart beats a fearless power, fueling rhythmic submission, resistant blood flow that gives life to my joy, my dance, my laughter, and ultimately my peace. All are more powerful than weapons formed for the destruction of multitudes. I submit to you my platelets in place of bullets, each individually marked with the inscription, I will. 'Cause I will sing off key at the top of my lungs in the midst of funerals to celebrate life. I will clap my hands to the beat like rumbling thunder and sway my thick hips so hard that the earth will tilt off its axis from the strength of my happiness. I will laugh hysterically and unapologetically, bent over, then head back and bent over again until gripping my side with no more sound coming out. Then, in a dramatic finale, fusion with symphonic ballet movements and ancient rhythms, pirouette to the beat of African djembe drums over the crowns of the skulls of demons. Then lean over, twirl Satan around, and smiling, kiss that rat bastard square on the lips. I want to sing so loud that the ancestors can't help but look down and join in, till their voices shake the universe by shifting the winds. I want to take every complaint that has ever rolled off my tongue, roll it up in zigzag papers the size of California King sheets, then pass them around to every living cancer patient so that for a moment they are pain-free and can sing, clap, dance, and laugh with me. I want to take every tear I've ever shed, force them through hydrants in the middle of every inner city household in America. In mid-August, to let all the residents run through so they too can feel the cool waters rolling off their weathered skins. From the bare-chested little girls who have yet to appreciate that this is the one and only time in their lives that their breasts will not be bound, and to our barefoot endangered sons who for once can run free without running from piercing gunshots ringing out in the midnight air. And without the adrenalized fear of being chased by the police, let them run. Let them run through my tears, for this life water that flows endlessly is for them. Let them run, but let them run free. See, I want to be thoughtless with joy, breathless with singing, floating, flying, weightless through the freedom of dancing. And as I reach up for clouds while descending down from the sky, I want to hand pieces of them to Somalian soldier children to eat like cotton candy. There will be no fear of the sweetness making them thirsty, for my tears of joy will fill the rivers, lakes, oceans, and earth's tributaries. I've got much to give and plenty to spare. Freeing women to have multiple orgasms during painless underwater childbirths, while awaiting family members celebrate with singing, laughter, and dance. My dance will be infectious. The next pandemic, there will be no vaccine for it. So let's all prick our fingers and take this blood oath as a reminder to sing off key at the top of your lungs in the midst of funerals to celebrate life. Pirouette over the crowns of the skulls of your demons and face evil fearlessly, wielding your weapons of joy. Dance as hard as you can with defiant tears streaming until your pain goes away. Laugh until you have to pee. Clap your hands and sway your hips with earth-shaking happiness. Sing so loud that the ancestors can't help but look down and join in. And one day, cloaked in all white, my dreadlocks flowing freely, I will look down smiling as a member of the ancestral chorus, reminding y'all to do it over and over and over and over again.
That was great.
Thank you.
So, KK, let's call the culture. What is your call to action for the culture?
So my call to action for the culture is to be aware of where you are and how you use your voice, and make sure that you're listening. Because even though you may be around somebody who doesn't understand the intent of their action, we can still have conversations with people that call people forward. And it's not about calling people out. There are folks with good intentions that we can call in, and those who need to be called out, call them out. But either way, make sure you're using your voice and doing the calling to those around us.
My call to action for the culture is similar, to keep bringing to everybody's attention how things affect us. I think that the more we call it out, the more people will start to recognize. But when you're calling it out, do it in a respectful way. I think sometimes people can be a little harsh, but that fire that you're bringing is not going to put out someone else's fire. It's going to spread that fire. And the people that you're trying to make a point to are not going to see your point. They're probably just going to call you an angry Black woman, or say you're violent or harsh if you're a man. So yeah, that's my call to action for the culture. I'm also calling the culture to click that little plus in Apple Podcast or that subscribe button in YouTube. We love to read your reviews and those 5-star ratings on Apple Podcast. They also help us. So don't forget to do that. Also, grab yourself a Blacktivity in the pop-up shop. And until we meet again, kings and queens, keep doing big things. See you later.